right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started then. My name is Brooke. I am a second-year graduate student at William Press. I'm also editor-in-chief of Pathos Literary Magazine, which is a student-led mag here at PSU. So I'm well-versed in the trials and pitfalls of trying to do funding for creative projects. I'm just going to start off by having everyone just introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about yourselves and what your relation to this funding process is.
I'm Leia Weathington, and my main series is The Legend of Bold Riley. I'm published under Northwest Press, but I work with a series of artists, so what I've done is gone to Kickstarter to fund the creative costs, which means that I can pay out the people who work so hard on the book, because after a while, it's kind of a bummer to say, this is going to eat about 6 months of your life, and I don't have shit to give you except for 10 copies at the end of it. All right, good. Get drawing. I've also been involved in Kickstarters for Smut Peddler 1 and 2, which is from Iron Circus Press. I've got one ongoing right now that I contributed artwork to. Inspector Pancakes helps the president of France solve the White Orchid murders, which is a little bit children's book, a little bit not a children's book at all. And the upcoming Beyond Kickstarter, which is a queer sci-fi and fantasy comic series. Anthology, excuse me, it's not a series.
My name is Todd Sattersten. My relationship to this is I tend to come from a commercial publishing standpoint, but I've been doing a lot of experimenting in the last 5 years of looking at books as startups. So how are the ways that you find funding and get them, get the kind of traction you need to make them be successful? I think somehow I might have also been invited because I've funded something like 85 different Kickstarter projects. So, I've been very much a backer on the other side. I want to ask 3 really quick questions, like super quick. Raise your hand if you've ever done a Kickstarter project. Raise your hand if you ever contributed to a Kickstarter project. Oh, look at you guys. I did the best. I forget what the 3rd question is. If I think of it, I'll come back.
Do you want to learn about that, or is that something we should talk about? Are you curious about what it would be like?
What's interesting? No, what I love is the fact you've all contributed. I mean, we're talking to people who there's something there, so that's cool. Yeah.
So, anyways, my name is Pat McDonald. I'm the publisher of Overcut Press. I did a Kickstarter back in 2012. I've only done one. It was to sort of launch my press, and it sort of did what it was supposed to do. Then we've just kind of been making books since then. And so it kind of was sort of a good example of how that can work. So.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicole McArdle. I'm the marketing director at PubSlush. We are Kickstarter for the literary world. So we are crowdfunding for books, we are crowdfunding for publishers. On the other end of it, we also do pre-orders for the authors who said, crowdfunding, I don't want to do that. And for the publishers who, for whatever reason, don't want to be associated with crowdfunding. So we do just pre-orders, we do just crowdfunding, and we work with you every step of the way. So, and we have some more benefits than Kickstarter does, just as far as meeting the needs of authors.
Very cool. I think one of the first things we really want to talk about is what kinds of creative projects are best suited for crowdfunding and raising funds these ways. I mean, we all know that there's tons and tons of different kinds of creative projects. Some may be better suited to this than others. So why don't we start at this part into the panel over here and talk about, your thoughts on what makes a project best suited for creative funding like this.
Sure. So as far as crowdfunding, there's so many different sites, especially now there's a lot popping up. It really depends on what your needs are. GoFundMe, that's a great one for medical stuff, for if you want to go on a trip. For Kickstarter, tech projects are really, they do really, really well. Same with Indiegogo. With us, obviously, it's books. If you have a book, I just recently wrote an article, why should your book have to compete with potato salad? You want your book to be seen by people who are interested in books and not have to compete with every amazing tech project that there is out there. If you go on Indiegogo, you go on Kickstarter, you see that the books are making the same amount, if not less than what we're making. So you want to go where your audience is. You don't want to have to fight for their attention. It's hard enough getting people to see your book, so why not make it a little easier on yourself?
I think some of the book projects that work particularly well are ones where you've got they can get a good sense of the content very easily. So things that are very visually based, if they're graphic or art, because you can really sell that a lot more visually in a short time period, which is what you've got with a Kickstarter viewer or potential backer. My guess is, and I don't have any experience, but my guess is it would be tough to get people to really get into a novel type thing through Kickstarter.
Well, with the comic, it's very much you have an image and people decide right away if that gels with them or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with the novel, you got to sit and read the paragraph.
Yeah, so I think you have to kind of just think about sort of how people interact with the web and what sort of time frame you've got. If they're on your Kickstarter page, you've got to be able to get them in and interested pretty quickly. And visual stuff, I think, works pretty well for that. So I do think that helps.
My 2 cents would be, if there's a felt need for it, there's a place to be able to go get funding for it. We're just mentioning pre-orders. I mean, pre-orders have existed in publishing, I think, since publishing's existed. I mean, that was the original crowdfunding for publishing. If I think pre-orders are an outstanding way to prove out whether or not you should pursue a project. That if you can't convince somebody, like you said, you usually have a very short period of time to convince someone, whether it's title, subtitle, that book description, and then provide them a sample. There's so many places to be able to do it, and I think that I don't think there is a limitation. I don't think there is at all. I think the trick is knowing whether or not there's felt need for it, whether or not there are a set of people out there that are going to be interested in a project like you want to do, and do you have a connection to them already? I think crowdfunding sites can help you, but I think you probably need to have a pretty strong connection to those sets of people to start with.
And I think that what can make Kickstarter successful, because that's primarily what I crowdfunded through, is already having like an established presence. You've already been producing work that people have been able to access for a while, so they already know. Through word of mouth, people that don't know about you can find out about your project and spur some extra interest. And the pre-orders thing has been done a lot with Northwest Press, my publisher, has done Kickstarters before that are essentially pre-orders for books that he wants to put out. The Anything That Loves anthology, I believe, is one of them, which I should know much more because I was in that book. Spike Trotman, who did the Smut Peddler series, she already established herself as, a cartoonist in her own right before she started putting together anthologies. And not to mention we were producing pornography, so that immediately, got everybody's attention.
Branching off of that, do you think that it's absolutely necessary to have a following before you start crowdfunding, or is there actually room to start a project like that when you haven't necessarily branded yourself yet or have a large fan base to begin with?
I think you need a perfect combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be, some rando on the street and hope for the best. You need to have an established network, but you have to be open to promoting it to new people. We do this thing called the launch pad, which is for X number of days before your crowdfunding campaign, you can promote your project. So it is your project page without having that time constraint of the 30 days. And we always tell people, use this time to familiarize your own network with what you're doing, but this is your time to market. This is when you want to reach out to the bloggers and things of that nature, and you can send them something tangible to hold on to. So you definitely need that perfect combination of both your inner network, but as well as being open to reach out to new people.
I'm Chris, I'm Wade.
Hi, Chris.
Sorry about that.
Hi, welcome. Do you want to take just a minute to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. My name's Chris Morey. I run Dark Readings Press here in Portland, Oregon. We do mostly specialty kind of books, signed hardcover editions. We're getting more into ebooks and trade paperbacks too, though, but specialize in horror and dark fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi. So, run a few crowdfunding campaigns, a couple on Indiegogo, one on Kickstarter so far, and then one currently on Indiegogo. So.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
What advice would you guys offer to an author that's trying to get into crowdfunding? Like, what are your 3 essential tips going into it?
Shipping, total in that shipping, like figure out what it's going to cost and give yourself a margin for it, because a lot of people have just neglected some base costs. Taxes, because especially if you do a Kickstarter, it's done through Amazon payments. And once your project funds and closes, they take their money right away. I mean, that comes right out. Yeah. And then they don't give it to you for 2 weeks. So probably the first one is the Amazon cut. Definitely the shipping, and probably keeping just keeping some safety net money. Just factor all that in. Like, all of your costs should be in the final amount that's on there. There shouldn't be any surprises.
Yeah, something that they never did in the past was adding international shipping. You had to say, please add this much to your pledge if you're in this country, associated with whatever pledge level. Kickstarter recently added a feature so you can add a certain amount per country per reward level. So that's a huge saver, because you'll have backers that forget to add it, and we have to contact them individually. So definitely, in Indiegogo, it's still, you have to say, please add $15 international shipping if you're in Canada, the UK, or whatever. But like she was saying, that's definitely a key factor, because shipping and add-ons and all those things add up so quickly. It's crazy. You think that the crowdfunding campaign went great. Oh my gosh, we maybe made a profit on this thing, and then after you're done shipping 500 packages overseas, it's
you're like, where did my money go?
Yeah,
I have to pay my phone bill.
It's like $20 to send one hardcover book to the UK, so it's nuts. But
one of the things I did with mine was just because I thought it might be a better idea, and it seemed to work out pretty well, was initially I had domestic only. And then apparently I have a lot of readers overseas who were like, where's the overseas one? And I'm like, do they teach reading overseas? But what I did was I just factored in the shipping under the total cost. I added 2 more tiers. That way it wasn't like, here's a $100 rewards package with an extra 15 on it. I just kind of totaled all that together, so it was just one price, and it wasn't somebody going, oh, I can totally do this $100 tier, and then going, no, but that extra 15 is a bit much for me. So I don't know if that's something anybody else wants to do.
that can work. It just when there are so many countries sometimes, because it depends widely, like Japan to Canada to UK. It's nuts. But
I mean, I kicked that sucker up. So.
Be creative in the tiers you create. I mean, I always say to people who are creating projects that these are fans who are likely showing up. I think it's great to give you $25, but there are people who actually want to give you money. They would like to give you $100 to support your project. Right. Give them something kind of that. Don't give them 4 books. Find another set of creative ways to sort of interact, to engage them, I think, at that next level. And it's amazing the small differences that a custom dust jacket, a signed book, it's amazing what will deliver another $20 or $25 in a crowdfunding campaign. And how quickly those higher dollar amounts can contribute to the overall.
That's totally the case. Like when you start thinking about what I would think about is, like, your book is your product. Like, that's what you are really trying to sell. Like, you want to sell the book. You want to sell the actual thing. You're not an art dealer. You're not a button maker. You're not a postcard dealer. You're a publisher. You're a writer. You want to sell the book. But what you can do in order to get your numbers up higher, like just what you were saying, like a custom button jacket, or things that are signed by people, or personal inscriptions, things that are minimal cost to you to deliver on. But like you said, there are people that want to contribute more than just they want to buy a book. Like, and these people might be friends and family too. I mean, that's a large part of who can support you, and they're willing to sort of just they're willing to pay twice as much for, if they have the opportunity, or 3 times as much, and that's 3 that those 2 strangers that you don't have to know, because your Uncle Ed chipped in a little extra, and that's a very real part of the thing. In some ways, Kickstarter, I think for everybody, you start with your friends and family tier first, and you start sending out those letters and letting friends and family know that this is something that you're really passionate about, and you know me, and so here you go. And then that gets you a good chunk of the way, and then you start getting the randos in there, and that's where you start to build your audience, and you keep all that shipping information, and you kind of know who your audience is and things like that. You send them a personal note afterwards and start building a relationship.
Let me add one really quick thing to that. I think one of the most amazing things actually about crowdfunding a project is the fact that you know who bought it. Mm-hmm. It's a huge, I can't even articulate the advantage that you have over signing a deal with a publisher. Mm-hmm. All of that is, you are completely disintermediated, sorry for the big fancy word, from the customer when you deal with a publisher. You have no idea who bought your book. The wonderful thing about a crowdfunding project is in every case, you know exactly who bought it. You suddenly have a mailing list of people that you can interact with as you have other projects, as you want to share other things, as you want to involve them in your projects. I think the value of that in some cases can be even more than the money that you provide in terms of your ability to continue to interact with those folks if people are interested in what you do.
I think the top 3 pieces of advice I would give is, number 1, don't expect your campaign to sell itself. That's like one of the biggest misconceptions is, I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign, let me just sit back and watch the money roll in. It just doesn't work like that, thankfully, or I wouldn't have a job. The second thing is, the people who you think are going to support may not necessarily support. Someone somewhere used the number 40,000 people and said, everyone go tell this person you have 40,000 people in your network. Because if I had $1 for every time someone said, I have 40,000 people in my network, I'm going to do great, and then 2 weeks later called and said, I don't know where my 40,000 people went. It's just don't count on all these people because you don't necessarily know that they're going to support. And I think the third piece of advice would be, use the correct verbiage. It's not a pledge, it's not a donation, it's not a charity. You're getting support, they're getting something in return. It's an incentive that they're getting. They're getting something better than if they were to hit buy now. The minute you say pledge or support, you're gonna lose people because they think they're getting nothing in return, whereas they're getting more than they would normally if they went to Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Well, it's the word reward versus,
right.
Donation, don't use that word at
Ever.
all. Pledge is tenuous sometimes, or like support, like go here to support this and look at all of our great rewards.
A professional presentation also makes a big difference.
Yes.
Don't have a big block of text. Images really add a lot to a campaign page. I always try to intersperse a lot of nice artwork and things like that so people keep scrolling, because otherwise if it's just paragraph after paragraph. I've seen campaigns like that. And
the video too. Nobody wants to sit there watching you read like this, or watching you look at the camera and then read off to the side for 3 minutes. Yeah. It's painful to sit through that.
And a lot of people don't even watch them a lot of times. I mean, you got to make sure you've got one on there, but just keep it brief. It doesn't have to be too much. I think I drank wine all the way through mine. But I mean, especially in terms of like presentation, I did a script for a friend of mine. It was supposed to be for an anthology, and it was very much like not my circus, not my monkeys kind of situation. But I went to the Kickstarter page before it launched, and I was like, this is no bueno. But yeah, make sure that, it's easy a bit for me if I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter for a graphic novel, because I have all of this artwork, I have all of this stuff that I can show people to catch their eye, and I also would do stretch goals. If we overfunded by a certain amount, then I got, for this last one, I got Lynn Vizel, who's a really, really great artist, to do a specialty print that would go with all the rewards. It's the difference between having just like a rough outline and, a finished book in a Kickstarter page.
It's a very emotional form of e-commerce. I found it's when people get really behind the project and believe in it. In the final hours, sometimes they'll pitch in another couple $100 just to try to get to a certain stretch goal. And you wouldn't see that with a regular pre-order by any means. People won't just randomly throw $200 more for. So that time limit and the inspiration, all the presentation behind it is so important. The sense of urgency, a good presentation, a good idea. You can make some big things happen.
I would also maybe suggest that when you're saying that sense of urgency, been a lot of sort of data analysis on when and how Kickstarters get funded, and it's at the beginning and the end, and there's a really big, long, slow bubble. At least that was my experience. And I think if you look at
period, slow middle.
I mean, so if you pick if you're trying to earn a set goal and you think, well, we should give ourselves like 3 months to do this. Don't do it for 3 months, because you will have a very long period of zero activity. And I think that there are some sites, I forget what it's called, but you can plug any Kickstarter into it, and it'll kind of sort of show you sort of the statistical analysis of the thing, and you can actually see, like, well, it was X amount funded on, and you get halfway there in the first week, and then it just flatlines for 3 weeks, and then like you get your last half in the last week or something like that. So the urgency is super important.
Yeah, and especially in a long timeline. I mean, you're going to want to be on your hustle every day, on Twitter, on Tumblr, contacting news websites, like to hit the market. Like mine is lesbian fantasy adventure series, so I'm going to like Autostraddle, Black Girl Nerds, specific outlets that I want to drum up publicity through, while also once or twice a day, without irritating anybody, remind them that I have this lovely project going on that they would perhaps like to contribute to. And people kind of get tired of me blowing up their feed after a while. So yeah, 3 months that's awful.
Yeah.
It's a big time commitment. And as we see more and more people turn to independent publishing and self-publishing, I think a lot of creators have concerns that going that route is going to damage their chance into the future of being picked up by an actual publishing house. So what are your thoughts on using crowdfunding for self-publishing or independent publishing, and is that going to be positive or negative for a publisher's career?
Favorite example of this is an author called, her name is Jamie McGuire. She does like teeny kind of books. She was on Nook Press, and when I tell you there were typos on every page, there were typos on every page. And just somehow, because she gained this cult following and was really good at promoting herself, long story short, Simon & Schuster picked her up because she had this known following, and they knew, okay, this is a sure thing. Like, we know when we put out a book, she has an audience for it already. When you're crowdfunding, you're showing, A, you can raise the funds so I can pay for whatever it needs to be done. You're paying to have it look professional, not like a cover that looks like you made it on Microsoft Paint and starch white pages, because starch white pages, please never do that, and awful formatting, whatever. So you have a professional product, but you also have an audience that you can then show a traditional publisher. I have 300 people that are already interested in my book. Imagine if I have professional marketing behind it, what it could be. So you're setting yourself apart from the Joe Schmo who typed up the book and threw it on CreateSpace and hope for the best.
What are...
I want to add one thing to that. I guess what I'd say is that I think that there are lots of projects that a commercial publisher can't support. And I mean financially, in terms of just what their lower limit is in terms of the number of copies that a book needs to be able to sell for them. And there's a whole spectrum of publishers out there that can do lots of different things. I think one of the things that Kickstarter allows is the fact that you can potentially, and whether it's the size of the project, of the number of copies that they think is commercially viable for the project, or maybe even the topic. You've listed all sorts of topics that people, publishers can be scary of. What I think is wonderful about Kickstarter is that you can prove the viability of the project, you can prove the felt need, and there isn't some guess anymore about whether or not this is a project that's going to work. And I think those are exactly the sorts of things that are exactly the building blocks that you need to be able to take to a commercial publisher to be successful.
And just in terms of like the comics community, I've seen a lot of people turn to self-publishing because the content that they're producing, and it has nothing to do with how well written, how well structured, how professional it is. It comes down to the subject matter. No one would touch it. It's getting a little bit better in terms of diversity, but there's also been this push recently with some publishers where they're really championing that, and it's highly disingenuous. I mean, your claims to diversity do dick all if you're not paying the creators a page rate that is a living wage. And I've heard too much from other colleagues of mine who have worked with people like this, where you're losing your IP you're losing your merchandising rights. They don't market it. It gets produced and everybody goes, we did a book with chicks in it, yeah, and then it just goes on the back of the shelf. Like, it doesn't sell at all. Whereas if you do crowdfunding, or you're putting it online, then doing crowdfunding, you're proving your audience and you keep control of your work. So.
Okay, speed round before we go to our Q&A. What are some resources that you would recommend for people that are new to crowdfunding and looking to get into it? Like, other than listening to amazing panelists like you guys talk about your experiences,
there are
how do you start?
Great Kickstarter lessons by a guy named Jamie Stagmeyer. He runs Stagmeyer Games. He does board games all the time. And there are just pages and pages on this blog of some of the most in-depth analysis of Kickstarter. And that's how I got started with crowdfunding. So look for Kickstarter lessons by Stagmeyer Games or Jamie Stagmeyer, and you'll find a lot of documentation. So.
How is that spelled?
It's M-E-I-E-R, so Stag, M-E-I-E-R. And yeah, he does all board games, but he just shares all of his knowledge on there. And he's doing a Kickstarter book actually too, I think. I'm not even sure if it's out yet. But yeah, he's fantastic. And I've actually talked to him a little bit just to get some advice from him firsthand. And I support all his campaigns just because he's such a great guy, you know. But he's totally transparent. If you have any questions, you can email him, he'll answer. So it's, yeah, just blogs and blogs and blogs of everything you want to know about Kickstarter on there. So.
Spike Chapman is the owner of Iron Circus Press, and she's the one that did Smut Peddlers, Sleep of Reason, the horror anthology. She's doing a new one called New World soon. That's sci-fi and fantasy, and she always has really good practical advice about running a Kickstarter and kind of getting rid of the dewy-eyed optimism of it. So she's always somebody to check out. Also, one of the other things that I did with mine, if I have one strength in this world, it's knowing what my weakness is. I can't run the accounting, period, full stop. A friend of mine, Tanika Stotts, did that for me. And what we did was we came up with a price to pay her for what she wanted. And then we did the campaign, and it funded, because my book is fucking great. And then I paid her out of that money. So if there's something that you're not sure about, it's better to find maybe a third party, ideally a friend, or just somebody who can help you with it, because it's a lot to take care of. Like, you're going to be doing your marketing on that, and the accounting, and the payments, and the reward shipping, depending. You can also get fulfillment companies to do it for you. So.
Have you ever used one of those companies? I've been thinking about checking those out.
I have not done it. My publisher Zan, who's the guy that owns Northwest Press, is set up for bulk shipping. So we did it that way, and it was pretty good. Erica Moen, who does Ojoy Sex Toys, she just did her Kickstarter for that. Used a fulfillment company. One of them was a little shoddy. Topatico and We Make Things, I believe, are the fulfillment companies, and I'm hearing a lot of good things about though now.
Okay. Because I'd be a little nervous, you know, but it's at the same time, it's such a huge pain.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's, if you total up the numbers, I mean, you in your home desperately duct taping things together and licking 8,000 million stamps, you know,
Right.
What's the toss up?
Mm-hmm. That taste never really goes away.
No, it never does.
So we help our authors kind of every step of the way with basically everything that we mentioned. So we give you email templates to send out to your network, so you're making sure you're getting the message across, you know, as powerful as possible. We help you with reward levels, so we do consultation on that to make sure your reward levels are what they should be. As far as fulfillment, if you do pre-orders with us, we partnered with Ingram, so they do fulfillment and distribution. We have a pub/prep program for those who are like, I have no idea what marketing is, please help me. Where we kind of, you know, walk every step of the way. We help you, hold your hand and say, okay, this is what you need. We'll send you tweets to literally copy and paste, Facebook statuses. Again, the email templates. I mean, it's basically, you still have to do work. I don't want to make it sound like we do everything for you, but it's the hand holding that a lot of authors need. We also work with a lot of self-publishing companies, Lulu, Wise Ink, Fast Pencil, a few others, and we kind of, based on whatever your book is, what your needs are, we can direct you to them if that's, you know, what you so choose. We take phone calls if you're, you know, oh my God, please help me, and we talk you off the ledge, which happens pretty frequently. Same with emails, things like that. We take 4%, which is less than Kickstarter. It's a flat fee. If you're doing pre-orders, we take 10%, which is significantly less than Amazon, which is 30%. And we offer flex funding, so you have a minimum and a maximum goal. So if you don't make your max, but you surpass $500, don't worry, you get to keep your money. And we still take 4% unlike Indiegogo. So that's my plug.
Do me a favor, slide one of her business cards.
So does Ingram do the crowdfunding fulfillment, or is it just for trade paperbacks?
For right now, it's pre-order. We're working on the crowdfunding part of it, but as far as ebooks, we do the distribution for you, as far as sending it and all of that. So we just want authors to succeed. We really work with you every step of the way. And again, it's just so you don't get lost in the shuffle. You know, we deal with authors on a daily basis. We know what your needs are. We know what your usual problems are, which is being very overwhelmed. As far as you were talking about the midpoint of campaigns, absolutely, that's when we have a lull. That's why we offer write an article rather for our blog. We will promote it at the midpoint. What a great way to organically promote your campaign. Hey, I wrote this article. It just so happens to backlink to my project. It's a new way to say support me without saying support me.
So I know where I'm taking my next manuscript.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit less than 10 minutes left. So I'd like to open it up to the audience for Q&A because I know you guys all have riveting questions. So what would you like to hear?
Please, not all at once.
I have more questions if you guys don't, but you know, just giving you guys the opportunity.
Mr. Cat is chewing on his pen. I know you got something to say.
There's something out here.
You'd have a better tasting pen.
What haven't we talked about? I mean, you all showed up here for some reason. So, the question behind the camera.
How much or what do you do to pre-market it ahead of time to kind of get the word out there before you launch? Like, how do you set up a runway for yourself?
That's why we put out the launch pad for that exact reason. Marketing your campaign when you only have 30 days and you need those 30 days for funding is very, very hard. So with the launch pad, you're able to have your crowdfunding campaign. It has a countdown. You're collecting fans as if it were on Facebook, and you get all the analytics of your fans. So you still get those analytics that you would during a campaign without actually, you know, receiving the funds right away. But once your campaign launches, we then email everyone who became a fan and say, hey, this campaign is live now. So it's an organic way to promote your campaign without automatically saying, hey, I don't know you, hand out, I need money. So it's taking that time, really just familiarizing people with what you're doing. Crowdfunding is still relatively new. Finding people, you know, within your niche, whether it's blogs, go local. We had an author who in New York who went to Brooklyn Brewery. They do free literary events, and she did her campaign launch there and received $2,000 in a night. You know, go to your local library, do a workshop, call up your local newspaper. Crowdfunding, still, again, it's new, great angle. Think outside of the box. The more creative, the better.
Podcasts too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you all agreed that a 3-month period sucks.
Yeah.
What makes sense?
30 days.
30
days.
30 days?
Yeah.
It gives you enough time, and it doesn't exhaust people with, you know, marketing, basically.
Right.
Crowdfunding campaigns can get very loud as far as the marketing goes. So we use mostly social media marketing, and it's a kind of a delicate balance to find how much you don't want to oversaturate everybody's Facebook feeds as opposed to, you know, trying to drive the traffic to the page. So it's kind of a balance that we try to strike. But we've gone almost purely social media just because it's business to consumer.
Okay.
And Twitter's incredibly useful, and
Yeah.
Tumblr. Within my community, you know, I have other colleagues, artists that follow my work and like it, so they would do a piece of fan art and, you know, be like, this is Bold Riley from Leia Weathington's graphic novel, which is actually running a Kickstarter right now. Surprise. And then that thing would circulate for a while, and it would get more clicks because they've got fans of their work. So if they're vetting me as somebody worth reading, then I'm bringing in their readership.
Think about what would work for you. You know, I always say familiarize your network. Have them involved in the process. Hey, I'm working on my rewards. Which reward do you like better? So that way when your campaign comes out, it's not like, oh, I haven't heard from you in 3 months and now you're asking for money. It's, oh, there's the crowdfunding campaign you've been talking about for 3 months or whatever it may be. And hey, there's the reward I voted for. Okay, so it's more organic. Think about, again, how would you want to be marketed to? If you were on the other end of it, what would work for you?
The internet loves artwork and images too, and we always try to assign a really talented artist to our projects, and then in the midst of the campaign we'll pay that artist to create pieces based on the project and then release it while the campaign is still going, and we'll do a promoted Facebook post or a promoted tweet and attach that image to it. and a lot of times it'll get hundreds of shares, and people will just go nuts because they love the artwork.
Now, Chris, I'm sorry. Out of curiosity, do you also, when the artist does that piece of artwork, do you put it up for sale as a reward tier?
Oftentimes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
because
right
that's good.
We're doing an anthology right now with Daniel Serres, this amazing Italian artist, and he's going to do hopefully illustrations for every store if we reach our funding goal. And then at that point, each painting will be offered for sale on the campaign page as well. So it's a nice extra way to raise funds for the campaign. Helps the artist too.
So with rewards and tiers, I mean, is there a rule of thumb as to how many tiers of rewards, or does it depend on the project entirely?
No, I mean, it can depend on the project. I think about no more than 10 initially. Now, if you start overfunding, then you can have stretch goals. You hit 25K.
Right.
And then you get, like a hardcover edition of the book that's signed, that has a dust jacket, with a special book plate in it or something like that. Generally, what I find is useful is I have a couple of tiers, 2 or 3 that are just digital. You get like a bundled PDF of like the first book, and then maybe 3 issues that were done by one artist. If you're just interested in that one artist's work, and you can hit those for about $5 or $10 depending on page count, and then you kind of go up from there with, here are your physical rewards with the books. Maybe there's a sticker that comes in it or something, and then just kind of keep going up from there.
And be reasonable. Don't price your book at $100. Like, I know authors will do it all the time. I understand your work is your baby, but again, think of
you got to give them something extra in that. I mean, that thing has to be bound in ancient jade to charge that much.
I think the important thing is to think about what's the product that you have that you're really trying to sell, and in this case, for all of us, it's a book. And a couple of things that are below the retail point, so that you can, people that might not be able to afford it or whatever can feel like they're supportive, and participating. But again, you're not a button maker or a postcard maker or things like that. So when I was doing it, I just didn't want to have a lot of little dinky rewards. I wanted like a couple of things that I could do before you get to the actual product, and then there were ways that people could sort of exponentially support the Kickstarter after that in order to kind of keep so that I didn't have to be dependent on 250 backers. I could do it with 125 type thing or whatever it might be.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
A question about, so with the music industry, I see that a lot of the time they're asking for to reach their goals so that they can create the record and they have funding to be able to take time off and actually make the record. And for writing a book, I'm just kind of imagining if you would say, can you take, help support me while I'm writing, or if it always would just be for something that's a finished project.
Are you familiar with Patreon at all? Patreon? It's I wouldn't do like, I need time off to work on this through Kickstarter. That's not, everybody's gonna go, fuck you, I gotta go to the office on Monday. Kiss my ass. Patreon is, it's sort of crowdfunding. Basically, for different tiers, people have access to like behind the scenes of your work, maybe a free sketchbook, or not a free sketchbook, but a sketchbook that they can download, and they can donate, or pledge like $1, $5, $20. Maybe for $20 you're sending them a postcard, or they get to read the chapter of your book way ahead of time, and that can bring in some income. Just on an ongoing basis. A lot of cartoonists have been using that lately.
I think Patreon's an extremely exciting platform, actually.
Yeah.
I think it might solve a lot of. I know so many writers that just struggle on a monthly basis with their bills, and now a couple of them have Patreon accounts. One's $600 a month. I mean that. He's just starting out, so that's not a bad way to start. Helps him pay his monthly bills. And
I mean, Erica Moen, she's been paying her mortgage on it.
It's Patreon. And it's pretty dang new. I think it was launched last year, and but yeah.
I think to your original question, the thing I think about there is, again, music I think is a great example of that. When the band says, will you buy my tank of gas to get me from city A to city B, you're like, really? But if I'm going to buy a ticket to the show when they're in Portland, like the whole mechanism of that changes. And so I would think about the fact that I think all of these platforms are, what we're trying to do is support the creation of something, whether it's a live experience or whether it's a product and we want to believe that it's going to happen. I think, like when I see the, hey, can I take time off stuff, I'm like, yeah, but am I going to actually see the album? Like if I put the money in? And I think a lot of people have that. So I would encourage as much as possible to connect it to the finished product that you really are guaranteeing.
And a successful Patreon you're proving that you are working. There is momentum on your projects and that you're producing content for people to consume. I mean, it's proof of concept essentially, and people go, all right, you're not just sitting around, jerking off during the loading screens of Final Fantasy IV or whatever. That was really specific, but I won Best Writer in 2013.
Just from our personal experience, when we did ours, we had the book done. It was laid out. We had bids from the printer. We were pretty much ready to go. And to be quite honest, doing all of that work with an author and everybody involved, we were going to print this book whether this Kickstarter was successful or not. But by making it seem like there's this urgency to the whole thing, it was a great way to basically start pre-selling the book, start using it as a marketing thing. When the Kickstarter was successful, we were able to use that to actually go with the printing of the book, and it allowed us to start funding our second project without having to go back to the Kickstarter thing. So it was the Kickstarter where I don't know how often you can go back to that one. I've only done it once, but it was, we had and the rewards then came pretty quickly afterwards too. Like we were able to say, you're supporting a book, and you'll be able to get the book fairly quickly on a turnaround, and it was a great kind of way of having that immediate fulfillment type thing.
And for that expected delivery date, overestimate.
Yeah.
You overestimate, and give them, a year in advance, and then it'll come out next year, and then deliver to them 6 months early, and they'll be happy as ever. But if you say it's going to come out in 5 months, and then there's inevitable delays like there always are, then people are going to start complaining, and I thought it was supposed to be in stock then. But
the thing with that is that people want what they want, and they want it now. So unless you have a following, a readership, people know 100% who you are, they're going to lose interest. Even myself, I've supported projects on our own site, and they've taken, we usually recommend 3 months away from publication, but we had this one author, I supported her book, and it was like 6 months until I got it. And by the time I got it, I was like, I still haven't read it, I lost that interest and that excitement for it. So, and it's funny you say that, because I had an author who sent me an article about a woman who did exactly what you just said on Kickstarter, and she got so much backlash for it. We have to support you so you can sit home and write. What are you kidding me? Like, it's just not an angle I would go with. Definitely not recommended.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. I think we're wrapping it up. We're just about out of time, so let's have a big round of applause for our panelists.
This is apropos of nothing. If you do a Kickstarter for, say, a comic, and somebody suggests doing like those little phone charms, like the little acrylic things, don't do that shit. Because those little bastards cost me $500, and they are basically useless, and they snap in half. So just saying, maybe that's not a reward you want to offer, is $500 bullshit pieces of plastic.
Okay. Yeah.
Good luck!
Don't have too many add-ons.
Real quick.
With the comic thing, would maybe a splash page or something be a good idea, or like a
as a reward, like original art?
Well, no, not like an original splash page, but something that just like a drawing from the thing that wasn't necessarily like a panel of comic.
Well, it sounds like what you're selling is or what you're offering as a reward is like an original illustration, like a print.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfectly satisfying reward for people. But also, I mean, especially if it's your comic and you want to get rid of original pages, sell those things.
But just limit the amount of add-ons that you have.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a t-shirt, have one t-shirt design, have 1 or 2 different kinds of prints. We made the mistake of having like 10 different designs that we offer people on t-shirts, and it's been a freaking nightmare. So yeah, don't do that.
T-shirts are a shit show.
Yeah, they really
Of
are.
which no one wants to really be embroiled in for too long.
They're terrible. Yeah. They're really pain to deal with. But yeah, limit your add-ons. That's what I would say.
Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been really enlightening.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sure.